packed with insights but designed to fit into your busy life.
Imagine this, right? A woman on horseback, and she's suddenly attacked.
Oh, wow.
But, she doesn't have a gun or anything like that.
Right.
Her only defense is, well, a book.
A book?
And a heavy book that she swings with, total desperation.
I mean, I guess.
Then there's this gunshot that rings out.
Oh, okay.
Birds, startled, take flight, all against this, really dramatic sky.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
So the question is, what would push someone to do something that, unexpected?
Yeah, what kind of situation leads to that?
Today, we're going to look at the beginnings of that story.
Right.
And we're going to be focusing on Alice.
Alice.
She's a newly married English woman.
Okay.
Arriving in rural Kentucky with her husband, Bennett.
All right.
And his, kind of formidable father, Geoffrey Van Cleve.
So she's going into a whole new world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, in the beginning, things are really different from what Alice expected,
In what way?
She thought she'd have this, properly married life.
Ah, the classic expectation.
But instead, she finds herself in this, really restrictive environment.
Oh, so not what she signed up for.
Not at all.
Right.
Especially within the Van Cleve household.
Ah, so it's the family dynamics as well.
Yeah, and her opinions, they just don't seem welcome.
That's got to be tough.
It is. Even the journey itself, the fact that they had to share this curtained-off space in a cabin.
Oh, wow.
Really emphasizes this lack of connection with her husband.
So not a great start to the marriage.
No, not really.
Not at all.
And it's right when she's feeling all constrained that Alice gets this opportunity for something more.
Okay, interesting. What is it?
It's the Packhorse Library Project.
Packhorse Library Project. I've heard of this.
Yeah, so picture Margery O'Hare.
Okay.
And she sees this, potential in Alice, right?
Right.
And she recruits her to be one of these, traveling librarians.
That's a cool opportunity.
It is, but not everyone was thrilled about it.
Really?
Oh, yeah, like George Simmons.
What did he think?
He had some, pretty strong reservations about women doing this, traveling alone with books,
It was a different time, I guess.
Yeah, and this is where you see that tension between, progress and tradition coming into play.
Right, the idea of women spreading knowledge, educating people in these far-off places.
Exactly.
It would clash with the, traditional ideas about women and what they should be doing.
Absolutely. And Simmons's worries probably reflected a lot of the anxieties that people had back then.
Like women stepping out of their expected roles.
Exactly. Stepping outside those boundaries.
It definitely challenges the norms, that's for sure.
It does. And this is where we start to see what we could call, mindful moments.
Mindful moments, what are those?
These moments of courage, resilience, finding purpose when you least expect it.
Interesting, I like that.
And Alice choosing to become a book lady.
Yeah.
That puts her on a path that's going to really challenge her and ultimately change her completely.
That's a great setup. So let's explore this journey. What were those realities?
All right, so first, think about the physical demands of Alice's new role.
Okay.
This isn't some leisurely stroll in the park,
Right. So what was she doing?
She's riding across rough terrain, on horseback, exposed to all kinds of weather.
Yeah.
And she's seeing all sorts of living conditions.
So she really had to be tough, both physically and mentally.
Exactly. It took a lot of inner strength to do that.
It did.
But beyond just the travel, it's the interactions with the community that really show the impact of this whole project.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
So there's Frederick Giesler, right?
Okay.
He's really important because he helped set up those library spaces.
So he's like a local supporter.
Exactly. And that really shows that the community was starting to accept this whole thing.
That's great to see.
It is. It shows that it wasn't just the librarians pushing this.
Right.
The locals wanted access to knowledge, too.
Absolutely. Everyone benefits from that.
Exactly. And then you have Margery.
What about her?
She seems to just, understand the community inside and out,
Like she knows everyone.
Yeah. And she knows who needs what.
Wow, that's amazing.
Like families struggling, people living on the edge of the law. She knows it all.
So she can make sure the right books get to the right people.
Exactly. And that was really key to making the whole library work.
It makes sense. Yeah, building trust and all that.
And the people were so eager to read. It's amazing.
What were they reading?
Oh, everything. Practical advice from Women's Home Companion,
Yeah.
to just fun stuff like comics. They wanted it all.
That's great.
It was, and there's this one story. It really gets to me.
What is it?
There's this little girl missing some teeth, and she asks Alice for a comic with pirates and a princess.
Oh, that's sweet.
It is, and Alice promises to find her one.
So they were bringing a little bit of magic to those communities.
They were.
And escape.
Definitely.
That's amazing.
It was, but running this whole library from horseback, it must have been so difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. The logistics alone.
Keeping the books safe, meeting all that demand, dealing with damaged books.
It must have taken a lot of dedication.
It did, and it shows how committed the librarians were to this project.
Absolutely. It wasn't just a job. It was something more.
Exactly, but it wasn't all sunshine and roses, you know.
Oh, of course. What happened?
Well, there's this one moment where a woman questions Alice's intentions.
Okay.
She thinks Alice's way of talking, being more formal, is like a form of mockery.
Oh, that's sad.
It reminds us that even with good intentions, cultural differences can cause misunderstandings.
That's true, especially in a place like that.
Right. Alice had to be really careful to build trust.
And show that she genuinely cared.
Yeah, and there's another instance where Alice brings articles about teething babies to a sick woman.
Oh, that's thoughtful.
It is, and it shows how the library could provide real, practical help.
That's so important, especially in those more isolated places.
Exactly. It really made a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, so even with those early doubts, the book ladies started to gain appreciation.
They did.
What were some signs of that?
Like, there's Jim Horner, and he's so proud that his daughter is reading The American Girl.
Ah, that's nice.
It is, and it shows how they were making a real difference, helping people learn, bringing families together.
That's the power of literacy right there.
It is, and you also get to see the bond between the librarians themselves.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about that.
So you have Margery, Beth, and Izzy.
And they're all different.
Oh, yeah, each with their own unique personality.
It's cool that they had each other, to rely on.
Definitely, they're a team. They supported each other through all the challenges.
It makes you think about those mindful moments you mentioned earlier.
Exactly, and you know where we see a lot of those stories.
Where?
On Mindful Moments and our podcasts, it's an AI audiobook analysis channel on YouTube.
Interesting.
They really focus on how narratives can, inspire personal growth and even change society.
That's a powerful idea.
It is, and unfortunately, all this positive momentum, it starts to hit some serious roadblocks.
Oh, what happens?
Mainly from Alice's father-in-law, Mr. Van Cleve.
Who? I thought he might be trouble.
He doesn't like Alice being independent, and he really disapproves of her work.
So he's pretty traditional then.
Very much so, and it shows at these church dinners,
What happens there?
he'll ask these pointed questions about babies.
Oh, I see.
And it's such a contrast to Alice's stories about women in England doing all these amazing things.
So he's pushing this idea of domesticity while she's talking about women breaking boundaries.
Exactly. It's a clash of worldviews.
Yeah, that's a recipe for conflict.
And it gets worse when Mr. Van Cleve and Pastor McIntosh start talking about the books.
What do they say?
They're worried about the content, think it might be, ungodly.
Censorship always rears its head.
It does. It's all about controlling what people read and think.
Exactly, limiting those different perspectives.
Exactly.
So how does Alice respond to all this?
Well, Mr. Van Cleve isn't just, talking.
Right.
He wants to control her, tells Bennett to bring her home.
Oh, wow. So he's really trying to put his foot down.
He is. And then there's this incident with some missing dolls.
Missing dolls.
Yeah, it seems small, but he uses it to try and assert his authority over Alice.
That's manipulative.
It is. He's trying to force her back into this submissive role.
Not going to fly with someone like Alice, I bet.
You're right, and even Pastor McIntosh tries to get involved.
What does he do?
He tries to convince Alice to go home, using the Bible to back up these traditional ideas about women.
Ooh, the classic arguments.
But Alice's response is so powerful.
What did she say?
She calls out the hypocrisy of Mr. Van Cleve's actions.
Good for her.
I know, right? She sees through those traditional arguments when they're used to justify injustice.
It shows how much she's grown.
It does. And of course, Mr. Van Cleve is furious.
So what does he do?
He tries to intimidate her while she's out writing, which just makes things worse.
He sounds like a real piece of work.
He is, and then something truly awful happens.
What?
Someone shoots Margery's dog.
Oh, no, that's horrible.
It is, and Alice immediately thinks it was Mr. Van Cleve.
I mean, it makes sense.
It does. It shows how deep the animosity has gotten.
That's really scary.
It is, and Mr. Van Cleve doesn't stop there.
What else does he do?
He contacts the governor, tries to get the whole library project shut down.
He's really going all out.
He is. He sees the library as a threat to his power, to the way things have always been.
It's a classic power struggle.
It is, but amidst all this, there's Frederick Gisler.
What about him?
He keeps supporting Alice, helping at the library, showing genuine concern for her.
So he's a bright spot in all this darkness.
Exactly, and there's even a moment where they share a meal at the cabin.
Oh, okay.
It suggests that they're forming a real connection based on respect and understanding.
That's heartwarming.
It is. And it makes you realize that even in difficult times, kindness can prevail.
Absolutely. We all need those people in our lives.
We do. And then there are hints that things aren't going so well between Margery and Sven Gustafsson.
Sven, he's the
Yeah.
interesting. So even those who seem so strong can have their own struggles.
Yeah. Exactly. It reminds us that everyone has their own story, their own complexities.
It makes them more human, more relatable.
It does. And then the community is hit with this devastating flood.
A flood. What happened?
Mr. Van Cleve's dam breaks, and it causes all this damage.
Oh, wow. So his actions have real consequences for everyone.
They do. And Margery, she confronts him at the restaurant.
What happens?
Well, it leads to her being arrested at the library.
Oh, no, that's terrible.
It is, but Alice and the others, they rally around Margery.
What do?
They bring food to the jail. They face the judgment of the community.
They're standing by their friend.
They are. And Beth, she even gets into fights defending Margery's reputation.
Wow, she's a true friend.
She is. And even though Sven leaves town, he still supports Margery from afar.
So there's this network of support even when things get tough.
Exactly. And it shows how much Margery means to these people.
And it's all happening while Alice is facing her own dilemma.
What's that?
Well, she gets news from her parents that she can go back to England.
Oh, wow. So she has a choice to make.
Yeah, she could escape all this drama, go back to a comfortable life.
It would be understandable, especially after everything that's happened.
But what does she do?
She decides to stay, to be there for Margery's trial.
That's a huge decision.
It is. It shows how much she's changed, how invested she's become in this community.
She's found something worth fighting for.
Exactly. She's not just a visitor anymore. She belongs.
That's so powerful.
It is. And then the trial itself brings all these unexpected revelations.
Like what?
About McCullough, the man who died, his character, and how he actually died.
And what does that lead to?
The judge acknowledging that it was an accident.
So it wasn't murder after all.
No, and it's a turning point in the whole story. The truth comes out, and Margery gets a chance at justice.
That's a relief.
It is, but the aftermath is complicated,
Oh.
Margery's released, but the community is still divided.
So not everyone is happy about it.
No, and some of the librarians, like Sophia, they end up leaving.
It shows that the wounds are still there, the impact of everything that happened.
It does, but despite all that, the story of the Packhorse librarians is so inspiring,
It is. It shows the strength of the human spirit, the power of books and connection.
And Alice's journey, it really embodies that whole idea of self-discovery and finding purpose in unexpected places.
Absolutely. It makes you think about what we can do in our own lives,
Exactly. Like, what are the books of our time?
What do you mean by that?
What are those vital resources, those pieces of knowledge, those connections that we can share with our communities?
That's a great question to consider. Like, what are we offering to others? How are we making a difference?
Exactly. And what does it take to do that, even when things get tough, when we face our own modern-day adversities?
It's a challenge, but it's a worthy one.
It is. And if Alice's story has inspired you, we'd love for you to subscribe to hear more.
Yeah, we have so many more stories to share.
We do. Stories of courage, resilience, people making a difference.
And if you want to delve even deeper into Alice's world, you can purchase Jojo Moyes, The Giver of Stars.
It's a wonderful book.
It is. And you can find a link in our show notes.
We encourage you to think critically about the stories that shape us,
And about the people who dare to challenge the way things are.
Because those are the people who change the world.
They truly are.
So until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep sharing those stories that matter.
We'll see you then.